Well, hello there and welcome to the channel. Now, back in the day when I was a young whippersnapper horticulturist, I earned my living running garden centres in and around London. And at this time of year, March, we would start to get busier, selling more plants, and we'd have a lot of new customers coming in and they'd be having problems with their plants. Now, these are problems that are easily dealt with. It's just because of inexperience. So in this video, I'm going to give you my top 10 common gardening mistakes that people make. And before I start, I'm going to give you the biggest problem with planting and plants, and that is overwatering every single time. Arguably the biggest problems with people killing off their plants is going to be overwatering. But the second biggest problem, and it is quite a serious problem, is you can blame it on the industry if you want to, but I'm going to leave that one at number 10, and you'll be surprised and probably change your purchasing pattern with these plants once I tell you what it is. So without further ado, this is going to be mistake number 1.
Not applying your slug and snail management early enough.
Thank you, posh voiceover man. So the sun is out, the weather is warmer, and you're enjoying the garden a wee bit more, which is why you've gone out to buy some flowering plants in order to brighten the place up a little bit. Now, the problem is at this time of year, many of the plants that you'll find in your garden centre have been purchased direct from the nurseries and are what we class as soft. They haven't been hardened off to outside conditions. Now, with these warmer temperatures, you're also going to find that slugs are going to start emerging from their winter hibernation from the soil. So the combination of putting out your soft leaf plants that are very, very tasty to the slugs and the slugs emerging, you need to put down your slug management now. So you might think it's a bit early and you're not seeing slugs around, but believe me, as soon as you start putting out those soft leaf plants, they're going to emerge and start eating them. So that's one of the big problems, your new leaf plants being eaten before they even get a chance to grow. So avoid this mistake, put out your slug protection. Now, there is an issue with slug protection. Let me go into that in a bit more detail. Now, slug pellets, they're not very good anymore, and that is both good and bad. The old pellets, which contain metaldehyde as the active ingredient, was very effective at attracting and killing off your slugs, but also it used to be very effective at killing off your wildlife, because predators eat the slugs will also ingest the poison and then kill themselves, so it's not very good. So what people do now is try and do a more organic way of protecting their plants against slugs. So they'll put down all sharp sand, they'll put down eggshells, they'll put down roses with little spikes on. Does it work? It does not. Now, the Royal Horticultural Society, that's my favourite horticultural society, have done extensive trials on what works with managing your slugs. There's only 3 things that really work. Now, the first one is that's you going out and picking those slugs off as you see them, and probably the most effective time to do that is at night when it's dark. Secondly is to put down slug nematodes. You mix it up with water and you apply it to the soil, and those nematodes are a predator of the slugs. And the third one is beer traps. Now, that is not 100% workable, but it's part of your management of slugs. So put those out, put in a strong yeasty smelling beer, and it will start to attract the slugs. Now, if you do all 3 of those, there's a good chance you're going to knock all those slugs on the head. There is one last thing that old Prince Charles likes to use, and he likes to use wildlife. So where he has, I believe he has the one of the national collections of hostas, but he plants those around a wildlife pond, so your frogs will come out and they'll start eating the slugs. And there is one more piece of advice regarding slug damage on hostas as per King Charles, and that is just don't look too closely. If you can't see the damage, you don't need to worry about it. And now we come to mistake number 2.
Check seed propagation requirements.
That's absolutely right. Not being able to germinate your seeds. Now, you might think from your early school days that all you have to do is get a seed tray, put some compost on it, put your seeds on it, bury them about ½ an inch, water it, and then they'll all germinate within a few days. Well, absolutely not the case for many seeds. You can go into any garden centre, pick up a handful of seeds, and you'll find that there are issues that need to be resolved in order to germinate these seeds. Most notably on some of the more fancy exotic seeds, you're going to need to add heat to the the compost, and that means using a heated propagator. You might think that putting it next to the radiator on the windowsill is going to be suffice, but no, it's not. Some of these temperatures, let me have a look, 25 degrees Celsius up to 30 degrees Celsius, again 20 degrees Celsius, that one's not so bad, but without that additional basal heat to warm up the soil, you're not going to get them to germinate. And also burying the seeds, you cannot bury all these seeds. You have to check the instructions. Many of these will need light in order to initiate germination, and that means either just lying the seeds on the surface, press them in, or putting a very fine layer of grit or vermiculite so that the light can still get in. If you don't have the light, they won't germinate. If you don't have the heat, they won't germinate, and that is the reason why many people's seeds never germinate. It's not the garden centre's fault, it's your fault for not reading the instructions or getting the correct equipment. So you've been told.
Avoid planting your plants in the wrong place.
Absolutely right, and this is going to involve a few mistakes because it's all about not planting the right plants in the wrong place. Now, this could be due to the soil type, it could be due to the soil acidity, it could be due to exposure, it could be due to full sun or too much shade. Now, you have to remember that when you look at the plants in your garden centre, these have originated from all parts of the world. So you could be looking at China, Australia, Asia, North America, you know, that whole Mediterranean-y band above and below the equator. And all these plants have evolved to survive successfully in varying conditions. So before buying plants or buying a particular plant, then do your research first, otherwise your plant will not be successful in the garden. Let me go into a bit more detail. Any plants that are native to a woodland setting are more likely than not to suffer scorch when planted in full sun. And any plants that have been evolved to grow in full sun, you put them in the shade and they're just not going to grow. But it's not just about sun. There are a number of plants that require either acidic soil conditions or alkaline conditions. Dogwoods prefer an alkaline conditions and won't perform well in acidic conditions, and plants that require acidic conditions like your ericaceous plants, which is your camellias, magnolias, rhododendrons, they'll struggle to grow in alkaline conditions. They won't be able to absorb certain nutrients in order to produce the chlorophyll pigment, and as such they will struggle, won't flower, and in extreme circumstances can fail. So my advice to you is, whenever you're buying a plant that you are not familiar with, always do a background check. You can go to the Royal Horticultural Society's website, and you can pull up each plant and it will tell you exactly the conditions that it will tolerate, whether it be light shade, sheltered, non-sheltered, free draining, waterlogged conditions. You know, there's a big range, and if you don't do those checks first, then you've got a much higher chance of killing off your plants rather than having them successfully grow and bloom year on year. Now, if you are finding the information in this video useful or perhaps just mildly amusing and you'd like to pass it on, then by all means press the like button. It supports this channel immensely and helps us do what we do. Don't forget, you can also click onto the subscription button. Subscription is absolutely free and you can unsubscribe at any time. It doesn't cost you anything, and if you want to be notified whenever we publish a new video, then all you need to do is click on that notification bell. Anyway, let's continue to find out what old Boilbelt has to say.
Don't leave it too late to purchase pre-packed plants.
Yes, pre-packed plants. Now, you will find in the garden centres there will be some large displays of bare root pre-packed plants, and this is a great time of year to purchase these because you will often have the greatest range of plants of those particular species that they're selling, like your dahlias or your canna lilies, and you need to buy them early, because the longer they are in the packet, they have a tendency to dry out over time, especially those garden centres that have put their display indoors where there is heating. So if personally, buy them from a garden centre that has housed them outside. Buy them as early as you can to avoid drying out. It's a fantastic way of buying a big range of plants at a really good price. Now, just be aware there are two issues. Firstly is that drying out issue. Buying them in March is absolutely fine. They probably only turned up in February, but if they're still about in April or May, and I have seen these for sale in July, then all you're probably buying is just a bit of dried stick. You've just wasted your money. And the second is just be aware. Just be aware that every now and again you're buying a bit of root with a nice picture on the front, and that root in there is not the same thing. And I've been caught out on that a few times in the past. So that's a bit of a downside. But yes, March is a fantastic time to buy these. Don't miss out. And if you can't find what you want, check the decent online retailers, because the range there will be even bigger. So there you go. Bare root plants, I love them, but there's a risk.
Don't forget to water newly planted plants.
Absolutely right. Now, I did mention earlier that the biggest killer of plants that people purchase is overwatering. But there is another issue with watering. You will buy your plants, you will plant them in the ground, and then you will completely forget about them because you think, well, it rains every now and again, that will be enough. But no, it's not. During periods of drought, newly planted plants will need to be watered because the root ball hasn't established into the greater soil. And that is particularly important for leafy plants in their first year of planting. So don't just plant and forget. Make sure that they do get watered during periods of drought. And even if it isn't particularly hot, quite often in the UK we'll have a spring, it might not rain for a couple of months, and even so you don't think it's particularly hot, it doesn't even come onto your radar. But just be aware, leafy foliage plants, newly planted, the roots are not particularly in contact with the surrounding soil. They're going to need continued watering until they've established, really until next year.
Don't allow bare root plants to dry out.
Yes, bare root plants. Now, companies such as David Austin will still be releasing bare root plants really up until the end of April, but that's mostly because they have those refrigerated. If you are purchasing your bare root plants either from a garden centre or online, then you have to action them immediately as soon as they arrive. Now, the problem with bare root plants is that they dry out. They dry out very quickly. As soon as they arrive, you want to get them in a pot of water, a bucket of water, and then protect them with hessian. You really want to get them in the ground as soon as you can and then water them in. But yeah, bare root plants, you cannot have them lying around unprotected, so be really careful with those. The later in the year you buy them, the risk of drying out increases, especially with those April purchase bare root roses. So you've been warned, all bare root plants are at risk of drying out, especially at the roots, and if the roots are dead, well then the whole plant's dead. So as soon as bare roots arrive, or as soon as you purchase them, really just get them in the ground immediately and water them. If you can't get them in the ground immediately, then get them wettened and then put something like hessian over the top to keep that moisture in. So that's important because there's a big risk of you losing those plants. It's quite common.
Always use a quality compost.
Yes, flipping it, if you're going to buy compost, buy decent compost. The amount of times in the spring I see these old fellas turn up and buy a ton of grow bags thinking that it's the best compost, and also it's very cheap. The reason why it's cheap is because it's crap. Let's be honest with you. Now, grow bags are usually made up of the cheapest peat that you could possibly get. Now, back in the day, that used to be moss peat, and then moss peat got banned last year, and now it's sedge peat, which is even worse than moss peat. It is a horrible thing. It is variable in its acidity, and there's no nutrition in it whatsoever. That's why when you're using grow bags, you've got to keep adding water, keep adding nutrients. It's pretty crappy. So don't think you're doing your plants better by buying grow bags and planting them all in that, because you're not. The John Innes Institute spent years doing hundreds of trials trying to produce a decent standard compost that works time after time after time. And if you're passing over a decent quality compost for a crappy old grow bag, then you're silly. Don't do it. Yeah, I see that mistake all the time. I don't understand it, but you know, people do it. Maybe it's advertising on the TV. People thinking grow bags make things grow because it's in the name, but really it's the worst compost you can buy, apart from some old crap you've made yourself and not sterilised. I'm not naming names. I'm not going to name names. I might get in trouble later on.
Plant death from sun scorch and frost damage.
That's right. This is your last one, number 10, and it's sun scorch and frost damage on bedding. Now, because garden centre businesses are always chasing profits year on year, they start selling bedding earlier and earlier and earlier. And this is a specific thing I came across in my early days. So come March, you'll get these very small bedding plants coming out of the nurseries, and the thinking was that, you know, we can sell them, and if people bring them back, it will take the hit and we just give them a replacement. But it very rarely got people bringing stock back, so it's not very fair on the customer, because if you see bedding plants available in March, you might think, well, we can plant them out now because the garden centres have them in stock. But no, the threat of late frost can go on really until the end of June, at least on the south coast here. End of May really you'd be putting out your bedding. It's a risk, you know, because none of these plants are frost hardy. And the other problem is because they've been grown on a nursery under protection, then those plants are soft. They've not been hardened off to outside conditions, and then they go to the garden centre, and quite often, once again, they are put under protection and they will remain soft. So as soon as you plant those bedding plants outside into the garden in full sun, the risk of those leaves being scorched off and killed is extremely high. So it's a very, very quick way of losing your bedding plants. So frost damage is going to kill them off, and planting them in direct sun without you hardening those plants off first. So to harden off plants, it takes 7 to 10 days. You start them off into a shady area outside, and then bit by bit, day by day, you give them a wee bit more sun, starting off with morning sun or late afternoon sun, and then you can build up over that period of 7 to 10 days where they're completely happy to take full sun, no problems at all. So that is probably the biggest killer of bedding plants in March: full sun and frost. So just be aware of that. Really wait until weather conditions are more reliable. So there you go. Those are my mistakes that you want to avoid planting and growing plants in March. And if there's anything you'd like to add, because believe me, that list can actually go on a lot longer, but I didn't want to spend all day and boring you with even more information. But if you've got any great tips, put that in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Right, now, just before you go, if you want to see more content, more behind the scenes stuff, and images that I've taken of some weird freaky plants over the years, then you're in luck, because we've created an Instagram page. So you can find the link in our description. You can find the link on our main page, and if I'm clever enough, I might better get a link somewhere up there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to see more YouTube stuff, then check out this video here. That's quite a good one. And if it doesn't float your boat, then another one right there. And enjoy these while I've still got the strength, imagination and aptitude to make them. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.